All right, we've heard from Sam, we've heard from Leif. Now it's time to get Richard, Mr. Mavs Draft. It's time to get his observation from the first weekend of the 2023 NCAA tournament. If you know Richard, he's going to have some great takes. And there is a player that he had been talking about all season that he wasn't as high on. And now he's starting to look like a genius, according to the NBA scouts I spoke to. So find out who we are discussing. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made this Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. We've seen the number of downloads and viewers on YouTube increase. So big thank you for that. And also, this episode is brought to you by the Ultimate GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NBA general manager and managing your basketball franchise, well, this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebasketballgm.com. You can find it on the App Store. If you are a listener, a Locked On listener, you get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On, but it must be in all caps, LOCKEDON in the game. I'm Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And I have a new position. I guess I'll announce it here. I am taking over as the director of scouting for the NTX Combine, which is a combine for draft eligible seniors where they can be seen by NBA scouts. So I'll be in charge of coming up with a list of players to participate to be here in Dallas. But enough about me. This is a show which is all about Richard's thoughts and his observations from the NCAA tournament. He's last but not least. Richard, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Congratulations on the gig. I'm excited I'm very biased, obviously, but I'm excited as a Dallasite to be in such company right now.
Well, you're invited. You got to come out, and
Definitely
we can, we'll use your thoughts and expertise. Maybe even have you suggest a few players for us. All right, let's talk about the NCAA tournament. Sam came on Monday. Leif came on Tuesday. Today's your day. And when you talk about the first round of the NCAA tournament, what is the first game or the first player that comes to mind so far when you talk about this opening weekend?
Man, I say this with a very biased lens because I had Furman with the upset over Virginia, and I've been riding the Jalen Slauson train year.
Yes.
Now, that being said, his game versus San Diego State, that's a lot to be desired. He fouled out very quickly. But he had a great game versus Virginia, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and he was definitely the best player in the game. And when you make Virginia's defense look weak, that's a big note as a prospect. I think he caught a lot of scouts' eyes, and he turned himself from definitely being undrafted to, hey, there's a conversation. Is he worth being taken in the last 10 picks? That narrative now on him has changed within NBA front offices.
He's someone that I feel bad for in a sense because there are two guys that are not going to get drafted this year because there are two teams that lost picks. And so I just feel like it's unfair to the players. Now, I get it. I don't know another way around it. I can't think of an alternative. But when there are teams that have their picks stripped, only 58 guys are going to hear their name called this year. And I just think like that kind of sucks for the guys that are like him that are on the fringe. And everybody wants to hear their name called. Well, for the most part, I mean, there are some situations like Austin Reeves where he didn't want to hear his name called. And now that looks like an absolute genius decision because he's probably going to get $45 to $50 million before the rest of his class gets paid. Now, who else caught your attention and stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's no Locked On NBA Big Board without mentioning Terquavion Smith. I feel like, especially from one of us, you're the original Terquavion Smith guy. I've tagged along and rode that high as well. Even though they lost against Creighton, he was not why they lost. 32 points on 12 of 27 shooting. It's not the most efficient game, but a lot of that was end of game, trying to bring him cut the lead a little bit. But I was really just impressed with the shot making against a really sound team that's now in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, me and Leif talked about Terquavion, and it feels good to be one of the people that didn't sell my Terquavion stock. You know, it's almost like Leonard Miller last year. Everybody became high on him, and then it makes sense. The numbers this year didn't improve pretty much at all. You can say they made a dip, but the team got better. The team, I want to say they won 13 more games. And like I mentioned to Leif, if you talk about Terquavion, the first thing that scouts and even just fans are going to talk about is the coach isn't good. They don't like the coach. They don't like, whatever. And these are just their opinions. And I'm like, well, if the coach is that bad, you don't like him at all, you think he's awful at X's and O's and whatever, they won 23 games in the ACC. So either he's not that bad, or Terquavion and Jarkel Smith or Jarkel Joyner were that good. But I thought Terquavion played well, even though he took 27 shots. He needed 27 shots to score 32 points. But he showed the 3-level scoring, even though, well, I shouldn't say 3-level scoring, 2 levels, because I think he was just 1 of 5 from 3. But he showed like the pull-ups, the floaters, and his ability to just get downhill, play through contact, $165. I can think of at least 3 plays where he went chest to chest with Kalkbrenner, did 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, finished. And of course, we saw the crazy left-handed dunk. I had mentioned on my Twitter, I don't see too many guys that are right-handed that have that much juice jumping off their right leg. And then everybody mentioned John Wall is the first one, KJ Martin, J.R. Smith. I think there may have been somebody else that they mentioned, but it's not a lot of guys that are righty that would take off and finish with their left like that. Where do you have Terquavion on your board?
I've sacrificed him a little bit more than I would have liked for other guys to rise, such as Leonard Miller, like you said, and a few others, but I still have him at 25. And I think honestly, I originally had him top 10. I don't know if he gets back there. I think he's definitely going to end up top 25 or top 20. First of all, guys will withdraw that are in my top 20. That's very likely. And then also, I just think, again, he's somebody who, I've said it a lot on this podcast, he did not play the style of game that he will be playing in the NBA. Teams will not have him number 1 on their scouting report, at least early in his career, the way that NCAA teams do. If you haven't watched North Carolina State play, defenses don't let him even touch the 3-point line. When he's on the perimeter, it's all right, make him shoot 5 feet away behind the line. Like, he is taking, even though he shot 33.5% from 3, it's because those threes were not at the line. It's not what a spot up shooter gets.
Yeah. And he was very efficient off the catch. It's just he didn't get a whole lot of shots off the catch. Now, you mentioned something, and I know you kind of dropped it off a little nugget here, but we got to switch gears. Who do you think is going to that's on your list that you're high on that you think will undeclare or not declare for the draft?
It wouldn't shock me. So I have a couple guys that I could see just coming back to school. There's Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino. While both should, you just never know. Who knows with Bryce Sensabaugh? He's somebody who I could see as a candidate. And then I'm not even sold Taylor Hendricks as a one and done, even though he should be. I'm not 100% sure. That's probably it. And then just reshuffling and of guys in front of him, I'm not sure Max Lewis is somebody who declares.
He already declared.
Oh, he already did? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. So never mind. I stand corrected on that. But in front of him right now, those are the guys, and I could just see some reshuffling. I mean, there's a couple guys where just looking at my board where I'm like, I can sacrifice them a little bit. One of them being actually Max Lewis. So that's one spot. And those are probably the 2 best sophomores too. And I mean, I've talked about it a lot. The best sophomore in the class is worth bumping up in your board.
Now, from everything that I've been hearing, Taylor Hendricks is out of there.
Good. He should be.
Gone. And I talked to a scout today, and he had him right outside the lottery. He thought he was going to be right outside the lottery. And he mentioned that he's a guy that you don't know what his true position is. He's, I guess, a 4, so you may be able to play some 3, but he said he's just so talented. He blocks shots. He shoots threes. He dunks. I think he mentioned he's one of a few players, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but 50 dunks, 50 threes. There's only a few players in the entire NCAA that have that amount. And his quote to me was, he's just a guy that's so talented. A team is going to draft him and just figure out where he plays because he has that type of versatility. All right, when we return, of course, we have to talk about Isaiah Wong and his 2 games that were just like totally different games. He had like a great game, and then he had a game where he struggled, but more importantly, he had the big game when they needed him the most. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the Creighton guys. We're going to talk about Arkansas's prospects and the guys from Duke. But let's talk about the ultimate pro basketball GM. If you ever dreamed about becoming an NBA GM and managing your own franchise, well, your dreams have come true. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team. You can play through the season and lead your team to glory. And you get to be responsible for hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and training players, making draft picks, and navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft and all the ups and downs that come with the season. All of this is in a challenging and realistic game. The Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free, and it is playable offline. And you can play on the go, and you can play as much as you want to. All you have to do is go to the App Store, download the game, probasketballgm.com, scan the code or look it up in the App Stores. That is probasketballgm.com. And you, as a Locked On listener, will get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure you check it out. That is the Ultimate Basketball GM. So start your dynasty today. All right, second segment. This is Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, Mr. Mavs Draft. All right, let's talk about the hot topic in the draft world, outside of last week. Well, last week it was Scoot and Brandon Miller. This week it's a totally different topic. People on, or our listeners or subscribers on the YouTube channel have been talking about it. Nick Smith. So I talked to a scout before you get into it. I talked to a scout today. We were going back and forth about guys that looks good in the tournament, the guys that didn't. And I didn't bring it up. And he said, Nick Smith is sliding. He says he still thinks he goes lottery, but it's at the very back end of the lottery. He feels like he really cost himself a lot of money the last few games. What are your thoughts on Nick Smith?
Well, for those who don't know, I'll give 2 bits of background. In the NCAA tournament, Nick Smith had 6 total points in 2 games. The first game, he had 6 points. Against Kansas, he had 0 points. So those were massively alarming games. He shot a combined 2 of 14. It was an absolute dud. The other bit of background is I've been low on Nick Smith really the whole year. I thought, great. If you haven't watched him in high school, watch his YouTube clips. He was fantastic. The problem is a lot of it never screamed, this is going to scale up. He's not a point guard. He's an off-ball guard a lot of times, and I think he's best when other guards are doing his work for him in terms of creation. And that just, I don't know if it works at 6'5", unless you're absolutely elite at shooting. Someone, for example, that fits that, Jordan Hawkins at UConn. Look at his stock rising. Very similar players, actually. Now, what's worried me is I don't think Nick Smith knows how to run a pick and roll. And if you're going to be a lead guard or a guard in the NBA, you have to be able to run a pick and roll. It's the most commonly run play in the league. Every team game plans for it. If you're not going to be able to run it, it's disastrous. He is very scripted when he goes out of the pick and roll. He doesn't even wait for his screener a lot of times. He's very raw in that regard. It's not to say he can't get better at it, but there's alarms. You know, there's a lot of like just alarms sound in my head when I'm watching him operate a pick and roll. And on Synergy, he's only had 83 possessions, but the injury obviously like should be accounted in this. But he's in the 19th percentile in pick and roll, including passes. He just doesn't have that pick and roll feel. And to me, that's a really big red flag. Unless he's an elite shooter, I'm just not entirely sold that he's going to be, you know, this great player. And honestly, the numbers don't add up right now. 49 free throws, 73.5%. That's not great, especially for a guard that's actually below average. And he's shooting 32% from 3 for the year. So there's a lot of red flags around Nick Smith.
Yeah, that's the common thing. Everyone still is high on the talent, maybe not as high as they were coming into the season. You weren't high at the beginning. The thing that has really caught my attention and stood out to me in the NCAA tournament is he's doing nothing. Like, he's not rebounding, he's not getting assists. He has more turnovers than like assists and rebounds combined. I mean, he's honestly, I don't think that Musselman wanted to put him in to close that game out. The last 156, 157, whatever, when Davis fouled out, that's the only reason why he got back in the game. What I'm looking forward to seeing in their next game is against UConn, I believe, is how many minutes does he play? If you were a betting man, if you were to guess, what do you think his role will be in that particular game?
Well, he played 16 against Kansas where he was completely irrelevant. I'd say it goes down to 10. I think they're going to give him a chance, and it would be a great redemption game for him going against Jordan Hawkins, who I mentioned just a minute ago. I didn't even click with that in my head, but he's got to be able to make the most of his minutes. I think if he's not hitting shots at the first 5 minutes of his playing time, he's not going to be playing much.
And speaking of Arkansas, while Smith's stock is falling, one of the biggest risers from the NCAA tournament is his teammate, Jordan Walsh. And a scout that I spoke to today says he has Walsh in the 18 through 20 range. And he said, obviously, the shooting is a concern, but he said he just lacks confidence in his shot. But he feels like with his size and athleticism and wingspan, he can defend all over the floor. And if you're a team, and one of the teams he threw out was Golden State, he says, if you're Golden State and you feel like Kuminga's going to cost too much money or whatever, you can just draft a guy like Walsh. I don't know what the Warriors picked, but this is just what he mentioned. And he can come in and just play a role, defend all over the floor. And all he has to do is defend and just be able to knock down corner threes, and he's going to make a lot of money. And he just felt like this is a guy that you can throw in the playoffs right now on an NBA team and say, go guard Kevin Durant. Says, no, he's going to get torched, but he will at least be a pest, make things a little bit difficult for him. And he said that alone is going to get him a first-round grade. Now, I had Walsh as a first-rounder until to this past weekend. What range do you have Jordan Walsh in?
So I'm flipped. I had him as a first rounder pretty much until mid-January. I was like, all right, I haven't seen enough from him to warrant this. I think it was fair. I still am holding my stock, but it was something where I'm like, let me see when he comes back to being like this, very just prominent player, I guess, like he is now. And then I'll reevaluate, probably slide him back in that first round, because I've always seen him as just this ultimate utility guy, right? This guy who he's not going to shoot the best in the world. He's only taken four shots in his, 4 threes in his last 4 games in the 4 conference tournament games and NCAA tournament games combined. He's not somebody who's going to be a world-beating, passer. He's not going to light up the scoreboard, but he's going to rebound. Like you said, he can guard Kevin Durant. He's going to make him work. It may not be he's going to get stops, but he's going to have to work a lot harder than he had to against just an average defender in the league. For me, I feel like that's somebody who's just such a high floor, and you put these high floor guys in the top 30. Like every class, it's generally 20 to 25 guys stick. You got to put Walsh in your top 30. Even if it's the back end, I think that's where I'd put him right now.
Yeah, the scouts really love him, and everyone I've talked to mentioned just how great of a job he did on Jalen Wilson and how much he made him work. So he has a big game coming up against UConn with Jordan Hawkins, and that's going to be a game that I think every NBA scout is going to be paying attention to, because there's so many guys that you want to see matched up against that type of competition, that type of pressured environment. And for, a guy like Nick Smith, it's the perfect game for him to show that, hey, the first 2 games in the NCAA tournament was not me. If he has a rough game, then you can imagine all the stuff that will be said and questions and concerns. But if he has a good game, I think it will be good for his stock. I thought coming into the tournament, he had a small window to move into the top 6 or 7 in the draft, because You can say the Thompson twins are locked. I mean, guys are pretty much finished, but he had an opportunity with a strong performance to live up to the hype that he had coming into the season. He still does. I mean, if they go all the way to the Final Four and he has 2 big games, then he'll be right around where people had him coming into the season. But if he struggles, then, we can see him on a lot of different draft boards around 13, 14, maybe even 15. All right, when we return, I want to talk about the Duke prospects. I want to talk about guys at Creighton. And then I also want to just get your opinion on different players that really caught your attention. And of course, Isaiah Wong. But let's talk about FanDuel, because it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. Because if you're a new customer, you get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to points scored and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So do not miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That is FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and Locked On. All right, last segment. Let's start off the last segment with Mr. Isaiah Wong. You have on a Miami shirt. Isaiah, his first game was kind of brutal. What did he shoot the first game? I saw it was 1 for 10. Okay, 1 for 10. Then the second game, he showed out. And so you are the driver of the Isaiah Wong bandwagon. What do you think about his performance overall in the tournament? And do you think that he has kind of opened the eyes a little bit of NBA scouts? Because he's improved in all the areas that everybody said that he's not good in. I think it's a situation that he's been around so long that people's minds are kind of set and made up on him.
Yep.
But I felt like coming into this tournament, this was a great opportunity for him to show that he is not the same player that he was 2 years ago. What are your thoughts on this play so far?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for always believing in the Isaiah Wong train. You never.
I can't say I didn't believe in it. I won't take credit for that. But
You never doubted me.
I never doubted you, right? Because who am I to just tell you that you're wrong? And you've you stuck with it, and so you've made me a believer. But again, I'm somebody that if I have an opinion on someone, I can change it, right? I am flexible. There are some people in this draft world that if they're set on a guy, they refuse to be moved. Yep. And so Wong has definitely done everything that he's improved on the areas that I had really concerns about. I thought he was just a gunner. Gunner's probably a strong word. I just thought he was somewhat of an inefficient scorer that was born in the wrong era. I thought in the 90s, 2000, where you played a lot of ISO and took heavy contested mid-range shots or whatever, I thought he looked better in that era. But he's improved as a three-point shooter. He's improved as a playmaker. And he's been winning games. So I can't sit here and ignore everything that he's done. So, no, I can't sit here and also be like, I was a believer the whole time.
I mean, also kind of adding on to that, like, I know for a fact, like, I mean, I went to Miami last year, saw him privately work out. And obviously I talked with him, and, the number one thing was, can you just improve that shot? Last year, he shot 30% from three, 75% from the line. The prior 2 years, 37% from three, 35% from three, and then 83 and 80%. This year, it is a career best in both 38.7 and 84% from the line. And he's just done everything you can ask for. That was the number one area. It was that, and like, hey, prove you can be that consistently winning guard that can run a team. And he's done all of it. So in theory, he should rise on boards because he just met all of the expectations. Actually, I would argue exceeded it. He's become an elite. He's the number one space creator, I think, in the country. I think there's no one who has a better argument than him for being just the best space creator as a ball handler. And on top of that, he's just shooting well. He's shooting over contests. He still needs to get a little bit better playing off ball. The only thing that really will hold him back, and this is something he can never really improve on at this point. It's just unlucky is he's 6'2", he's 6'3" maybe, and he's a combo guard. And that's just the average height in the NBA right now for a guard is 6'4". And he's not a true point guard, he's not a true shooting guard. That's going to be where it comes tricky. I still think he's someone where you bet on the talent and the abilities and say, hey, he can just blend in and make a role for himself.
Yep, I agree. Now, here's a conversation that I had today with the scout. And I had like long conversations with scouts today, and I'm going to put it all together in this NBA Big Board article that should be coming out probably Thursday. So today you listen to it. Isaiah Wong is a guy that if he went to Duke, he would have been in a bad situation. And I was talking about Tyrese Proctor, but I'm going to bring it back to Isaiah Wong. If Isaiah Wong went to Duke, he would have had a 1-year window to be NBA ready in a sense, or his replacement would have been on the way. And he was talking about guys that go to Duke and Kentucky don't always get time to develop. You kind of get forced out. And Trevor Keels is an example of, if he stays, maybe he helps his draft stock. Also, he could have been out of the rotation or playing a smaller role because there's another McDonald's All-American coming in. So I said all to say this. If Isaiah Wong went to like the wrong school where they're just kind of like churning out guys and you don't get the opportunity to improve over 3 or 4 years, he could have been someone that left to go to the league or after his freshman or sophomore year when he really wasn't ready and just had to sit there and develop in the G League or get that very, very small window as a second-round pick to actually show what you can do. So Miami was perfect for him because he was able to develop, get better on a big stage in a Power 5 conference, and now showcase it on the biggest stage, which is the NCAA tournament. Do you have him in your top 40 or do you have him higher?
I have him at number 39 right now.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about, well, no, I mean, that's good. Creighton guys. Do you believe, and this is a question I asked Leif, and I asked a few people this, do you believe there are 5 guys on this Creighton team that could see NBA minutes in the future?
No. I think they're a really good team that has a lot of talent, especially for college. But I honestly, I don't know how many of these guys end up playing in the NBA. And I think I think it's 0 or 1. Arthur Kaluma was the best candidate before the season, but he absolutely did not take the jump we all expected. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like he went backwards. I don't think Baylor Shireman's an NBA guy. Ryan Nembhard's good. Trey Alexander's pretty good. But again, like, do they scale up? I don't know. And then Ryan Kalkbrenner, I like the guy. I think he might be the best chance at this point, but I think he's tops out as like an NBA backup big, and he might. So 1 or 0 for me.
I love asking this question because when I'm from Omaha, so I'm rooting for Baylor. Everybody has a different answer. If I ask 5 scouts who is Creighton's best prospect, and you get 5 different answers. I heard today that Shireman can be like Joe Ingles, a guy that is a good passer, can knock down open shots, not necessarily be your playmaker, but can run pick and rolls. Then they liked his size. He rebounds. I had another scout tell me he thinks Trey Alexander could be someone that could play in the NBA, even though his bread and butter right now is kind of getting to his spots and shooting the mid-range. But he felt like he has the length to be a solid defender, and he can knock down open shots. I had another person tell me that they think that Ryan Nembhard is a Tyus Jones, TJ McConnell type backup. And he also mentioned that he feels like he could play a role at like Jose Alvarado, but he's much better at running a team than Alvarado. He's a better scorer than he gets credit for. And he mentioned, if you look at his brother Andrew, we never thought Andrew was a big scorer at Gonzaga or Florida, and he's averaged like 19 points per game in the last 5 games for the Pacers. And then another person told me that they thought Kalkbrenner could have a nice 6, 7, 8, 9 year career in the NBA as a backup big. May not be a rotation guy, but a back-end rotation guy that can come in and give you some minutes because he thought he's a good defender and drop coverage, scores around the rim. So it's crazy. So I've been trying to ask as many people, and what I love is that I'm getting 5 different answers if I ask 5 different people. But the same can be said about the Duke guys. Personally, my favorite Duke guy is Tyrese Proctor. I think Proctor is going to be a star. He's 6'5". He's a shot creator. May not be on Isaiah Wong's level as far as getting separation, but he can get separation off the dribble. Flash, flare. I love his confidence. We're talking about a guy that missed like his first 20 shots, or honestly, it was like he was 4 for 21 to start his career. Improved, shot 42% from 3 over the last 10 games. I think he's a solid passer. He's my favorite guy. But if I ask somebody else, they'll tell me Whitehead. Some people believe Lively. There's some people that even believe Filipowski could be their best player. Who's your top Duke prospect long-term?
So first of all, I love the Proctor pick. I had a couple friends of mine who, like, they know I watch a ton of college basketball, so they've reached out to me and they're like, why is this Proctor guy not on draft boards? Because it's funny, if you are somebody who has analyzed his game for the whole year, you're like, he doesn't move me. For like most people, that's the consensus, right? Whereas I think the people who are just watching college basketball for the first time, and fun fact, a lot of GMs are watching college basketball for the first time this year, they're going, dang, why isn't Tyrese Proctor on more boards? And fun thing about him, if you search Mavs Draft Proctor and then sort by videos, you will see one of the single greatest non-NCAA step backs I think I've ever seen in my life from Tyrese Proctor when he was at the NBA Academy. It was ridiculous. But for me, it's Derek Lively. I think Filipowski's close, and I do like Proctor. Proctor's just tough for me because I don't know if he's a guy this year or next year, and I'm having a hard time where I would place him now. I could make an argument for him. I think preseason I had Whitehead and then Proctor, and they're actually Lively. I forgot on the show we were talking about how much I loved Lively, but I think for now it's Lively. I think he's a guy who he impacts the game at the rim at such a high level on both ends. I think that's going to matter. Those guys end up being rotational guys. He may not be the highest ceiling, but I think he's the best prospect.
So I love Lively on the defensive end. I have turned a corner on him, but my concern is on a playoff team, can he play minutes if you're a playoff team? Like, is he going to be a guy that helps you win in the regular season, and then you have to scramble your whole defense of your game plan because he's bringing nothing on the offensive end? Like, when he sets a screen, he doesn't even look to roll to the rim. He just stands there. But in his defense, he did show flashes of shooting in high school, but absolutely nothing at Duke. He looks like he's completely lost his confidence on the offensive end. I still see him as a first-round pick. Again, I've turned the corner. I think at one point I had him outside of my first round, but he will be in my first round going forward. And then Whitehead, I'm coming along. He hasn't lived up to the hype. The biggest question mark is how much of his explosiveness or lack of explosiveness was due to the injury. He showed he can shoot, showed some flashes of being able to knock down shots. I forgot the comparison, but it was somebody I spoke to today. They gave a comparison. Oh, they said best case scenario, thought was like an RJ Barrett guy, but they thought that was like very best. And he mentioned that size and strength at that age and youth, and he felt like those guys with his characteristics rarely fail. But then he mentioned that you ask different people, you get different opinions. Well, we are running out of time. That wraps up this episode. Richard will be back, and we will give a preview of the games coming up on Thursday. Thank you for making Locked On NBA Big Boy your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen of the day, you have to check out the Locked On Game to Game podcast. Every moment, every performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA. It is available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and we will be back. But right now, we are out.